Hey Giants fans, so we are officially in September. Very exciting time. Football is in 9 days as I record this. Of course, the Giants will be home against Jacksonville next Sunday. I'm very excited for this, and today we'll be doing a season preview, maybe a record prediction, and just talk about the updated depth chart, some notes from the preseason, and who I've liked and who I think might get cut. Even though cuts come out later today, and I probably should wait, but I just want to get this video out there. So let's get into it. So let's jump into the offensive depth chart. At quarterback, we see Eli Manning first, of course, no surprise, and coming in the preseason, Davis Webb versus Kyle Lauletta was kind of a debate. I was always on the Lauletta side, and Davis Webb had a terrible first game to say the least, but he bounced back in the Detroit game. So he looked good for the most part, had some pretty good numbers. Lauletta kind of looked like a rookie. I mean, he's a guy who, he's not afraid to throw the ball deep. I mean, you wish he had more arm strength, but in terms of just trying to find a deep ball, he's not afraid to throw it, and he did overthrow some guys at some points, but I like where his head's at. Of course, he had that really nice run against the Lions in that preseason game, but really did not look that great against the Patriots in the last game, preseason week 4. So as we go to running backs now, Saquon Barkley, of course, no surprise, was nursing the hamstring injury. It looks like he'll be fine. You hope it's something that won't linger into the season. It's always possible with hamstrings, but the Giants have been very smart about handling that situation. So number 2 running back, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. If you have eyes, you can just tell that Jonathan Stewart is washed up. And I remember coming onto this channel a few months ago and just bashing the whole Jonathan Stewart signing, 2 years and $6.8 million, I believe it was. So I'll get into his situation later. But Wayne Gallman looked really surprising in my opinion. So I would love to have Wayne Gallman as a running back too. Even before we drafted Saquon, I said I was a Wayne Gallman fan, which is part of the reason I was comfortable drafting a quarterback. So I've always liked Wayne Gallman's game, and Jonathan Stewart, I mean, he's probably going to make the team based off the contract he has, and seems like Dave Gettleman is really loyal to him. But if the Giants did cut Stewart, they would have to eat up a lot of dead salary cap, and I'll get into the numbers later. So as we go to wide receiver, of course, Odell Beckham did not play a snap in the preseason, played a lot in the practices, apparently. So he looks ready to go. Sterling Shepard, who played a lot in the preseason, he looked good in my opinion. Had a really nice game 3 against the Jets. I think he had 7 catches and 78, 77 yards, something like that. A big surprise in the preseason was seeing Cody Latimer play over Roger Lewis. And I remember when the Giants did sign Latimer, I said I liked that signing for special teams reasons. He was a high draft pick, had a nice college career. I believe he was a second-round pick of the Denver Broncos in 2014. But you could see based off what he's done in the preseason, Latimer can make big plays. He's 6'3". We saw him catch that 50-yard pass from Eli Manning, which probably should have been a touchdown. Eli kind of underthrew it. But to see him make plays as your third receiver is pretty awesome to see, honestly. But the thing is, though, I mean, Giants fans got to realize that with Pat Shurmur calling plays, there's going to be a lot more 2 tight end sets. So I don't know how much Cody Latimer is going to be on the field. It won't be as much as Ben McAdoo's system, which was 11 personnel, where you have 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end, 1 running back. So Latimer will get his opportunities, but I don't know what kind of impact he'll make. Maybe if the guys in front of him got injured, of course I hope that doesn't happen, but if it does, at least we do have a guy like Latimer who can step up and make big plays. So this was also surprising, Roger Lewis as our 4th wide receiver, maybe even 5th. I mean, I'm really not sure where he stands right now. We saw a guy, Hunter Sharp, play over him a lot. I mean, Hunter Sharp, he did some impressive things, but he really dropped a lot of balls. I mean, I don't know if it was just a nerves thing, but he did drop way too many passes. Kind of reminded me of Preston Parker from a few years ago. Eli placed some balls perfectly to Hunter Sharp, and he dropped them, would have been first downs. So you hate to see that, and it's definitely not a good look for his roster spot. So I do expect Roger Lewis to make the team, but it was just surprising to see him fall behind Latimer right out of the gate. I mean, I thought it'd be more of a competition. And on to Russell Shepard. I mean, I remember him from the Panthers. Of course, Dave Gettleman was GM. I think he was on another team after that, maybe the Buccaneers or something like that. Russell Shepard's a good special teams player. He could make plays in the wide wide receiver spot if it's asked of him. So I think he's a solid player. I'm not sure if they'll take 6 wide receivers. I mean, maybe they will. I guess Hunter Sharp would be that guy. I think Khalif Raymond also had a nice preseason, so we'll see where they go with that, and that'll happen this afternoon. So not much time to wait there. So Evan Engram, of course, our first tight end, he did have a concussion against the Jets. So I think he'll be all right for week 1. Looks like he's progressing pretty well. Rhett Ellison, I've always been a big fan of Ellison. If you follow me, I mean, I definitely love everything he does, and he's definitely being used a lot more this year in Shermer's offense. So I love seeing that. Jarrell Adams, he's been a bit of a surprise. I mean, of course, he's dropped some passes. He's not really the best pass catcher, but I mean, I think from last year I see an improvement from Jarrell Adams, and he's definitely capable of being a tight end 3 on a team. So, it's all good having him. Then the offensive line, Nate Solder had a great preseason. I mean, that was such a relief to watch that. He had an average first game. He might have got beat once by Myles Garrett because he left off sides early. So outside of that, Eli Manning was really not getting hit from his backside. So, I mean, you love seeing that. Will Hernandez, he had some bright spots. I mean, he might have had like 1 or 2 penalties, and it's just like a rookie thing. So, he looked good. John Halapio, who, of course won the center job because Brett Jones was traded for a 7th-round pick in next year's draft. And the Giants do make up for it because the Giants traded their own 7th-round pick for their punter, Riley Dixon. So they get the 7th-round pick back. But, if you think about the trade for with Brett Jones, I mean, I'm not really a fan of it because the Giants' offensive line depth is not the best. And, I mean, if one of these guys were to go down, whether it's a guard or Halapio at center, I mean, you would like to have Brett Jones, as a backup. But, I mean, at this point, if Nate Solder were to go down, if Will Hernandez were to go down or something like that, I don't know who the Giants turn to, and it's pretty, it's pretty concerning. So, they do have John Greco. So, I mean, maybe they can find someone, maybe a free agent. I know Luke Jokel's still out there, who was like a 2nd overall pick a few years ago. So, there are options, but it's just concerning to see what would happen. At right guard, we have Patrick Omameh, who came from the Jaguars. I mean, he's had a pretty rough preseason. His Pro Football Focus grade has not been that great. I think it was something in the 40s or 50s. Don't like seeing that. Maybe you could see why the Jaguars let him go now. I mean, maybe he's not as good as advertised. So, maybe he just had some preseason jitters and it was a new team, and hopefully he'll play better in the regular season. And then we go on Eric Flowers, and I mean, I'll give Eric Flowers his credit. I mean, he definitely looked competent at his new position. I think he did a much better job at right tackle than he has at left tackle in his career, and against the Jets, he had a really nice game. I mean, I'll give it to him. He was facing a tough pass rush, and had a hands to the face penalty on him at one point, and was still able to stay in front of his man. So I give Eric Flowers a lot of credit for what he's done at his new position. I mean, if he can play like that, the Giants should be fine as an offensive line. It's going to be a lot better than last year. As I said, I don't expect them to be a top 10 unit in the league, but if they can be somewhere in the middle of the road, with Pat Shurmur's play calling, which, by the way, I love it. I mean, you see Pat Shurmur's play calling compared to Ben McAdoo's, and it's just so much better. I mean, Eli Manning in the last game against the Jets looked rejuvenated, and if you follow my channel, you could see I put rejuvenated in the title for Eli Manning's highlights. He looked really good. I mean, Pat Shurmur was getting Eli out, moving on his feet, and rolling out of the pocket, play action passes. And, it was the best I've seen Eli look in like literally 2 or 3 years. I mean, it was awesome to see. So I really think this offense is going to be it's going to be pretty good. I mean, it's going to be a lot better than what we've seen with Ben McAdoo. And, the Giants haven't scored over 30 points in 2 years. I think that'll end pretty soon. I mean, Pat Shurmur just knows how to scheme around his players and, do what's best for his quarterback. There's a reason he's made Nick Foles, Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford into amazing quarterbacks. And you get a 2-time Super Bowl MVP like Eli Manning, who has a lot left in the tank, in my opinion. He'll do some great things with Eli, and I'm really excited to see what this offense can do this year. And if you think about it, I mean, I like to think in terms of like what's a team's ceiling. I mean, you look at this Giants offense. I mean, the weapons they have, and the new left tackle, new left guard they have. They have a new center, a new right guard. Eric Flowers at a new position, so basically a whole new offensive line. Odell Beckham comes back. You get one of the most dynamic running backs already in the league, Saquon Barkley. If you think what's the ceiling for this Giants offense, I mean, they can possibly, it might be a long shot, they can possibly be a top 5 offense in the league. It'd be crazy to see based off what we've seen last year, but as I said in one of my last Giants videos, I mean, Ben McAdoo's plays were just so simple, so obvious. Teams knew what the Giants were running on offense, and to see a new play caller like Pat Shurmur, do some new things and throw a lot of different looks at defenses. I mean, I think the Giants offense can go really far this year. And there was a quote from Pat Shurmur saying, "We're going to go as far as the offensive line takes us." And I definitely agree with that. So, I mean, if the offensive line looks good for the Giants, I think there's a scenario where they finish in the top 5 in like total points or maybe total yards, something like that. But no, it's really exciting to see where this team can finish, and we'll get to see it pretty soon. So I'm really pumped about it. So on to the other side of the ball, a defense led by new defensive coordinator James Bettcher, who came from Arizona. Before we even get into the players, I just want to say James Bettcher is, he's awesome. I mean, this guy gets pumped up for preseason games. You see him really animated, yelling at his players, or jumping up and giving shoulder bumps to his players. I mean, it's just awesome to see a defensive coordinator who's so invested to his team, and it just looks like he wants the best out of his players, and definitely can yell at someone when they do something wrong. So I mean, I love having a guy like that. It was really nice to see. So I mean, it's going to be a really fun season with him as defensive coordinator, and I think his team on defense might have a really good year. I mean, I love the Giants' front 7. They're expecting to go from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4, but they can do both. I mean, we've seen them do a 4-3 in preseason at times, so but mainly we expect them to be a 3-4 defense. You look at B.J. Hill first. We have Damon Harrison, Dalvin Tomlinson, Josh Morrow, who's serving that 4-game suspension, and preseason MVP. It seems like every year this guy just comes out and has an amazing preseason. Kerry Wynn. The guys that jumped out at me was B.J. Hill on the defensive line. He looked really good. I believe he was their 3rd or 4th round pick. I think 4th. No, maybe 3rd. I don't know. 3rd or 4th round pick from NC State. Played defensive tackle. Damon Harrison, of course, looked great. You know what you're getting from him. One of the best run stoppers in the league. Probably the best run stopper in the league. Dalvin Tomlinson had a pretty nice rookie year. He looks like he's improving. Then you go to linebacker. We have Olivier Vernon, who's moving from defensive line to linebacker. We saw Chandler Jones last year thrive in this position, and Olivier Vernon's a guy who is really talented. Was signed for a lot of money, as Giants fans know. He does have an ankle injury that he's nursing. Not sure if he'll be ready for week 1, but I think he expects to be ready, so we'll see what the Giants do with that. Kareem Martin, who came from Arizona, he's just a pretty good player. I mean, nothing special, but he makes plays. He does his job. B.J. Goodson, I'm a big fan of. He's one of the best tacklers on this team, I believe. He's a guy who needs to stay healthy, but when he's out there, he makes really nice plays and is a big impact player. Alec Ogletree, who we traded for in the offseason, who came from the Rams. Some good, some bad. I mean, I wasn't really fond of how he was covering tight ends, and I remember Theo Riddick was matched up one-on-one with him and turned into like a 30-yard gain. So Alec Ogletree's coverage skills have to get better. It's a little concerning. And then Lorenzo Carter, who looked amazing in the Giants' last preseason game, had a nice sack. He looks like everything is advertised. He's a really athletic player, and if he's a star on this team one day, I would not be surprised. So I think the Lorenzo Carter pick is going to end up being a good one. And a couple more guys I couldn't put onto this list. I couldn't fit them. Connor Barwin, the veteran who came from the Rams, he was an Eagle for a long time. I'm pretty sure he's nursing an injury right now, but just another solid linebacker for depth reasons. And then we have Ray Armstrong, who had a really impressive preseason. I don't expect him to be a starter at any point for this team unless there are injuries. But as I said before with somebody, I forget who it was, it's nice knowing that we have him as a backup in case someone goes down in front of him. So, having guys like that definitely is great for a football team. And as Dave Gettleman says, I don't care what position they are. I'm taking the best 53 guys that we have. So I would expect all of them to make the team. And I really love our linebackers this year. I love our defensive line. The secondary, I think, might be a little shaky, but in terms of like run defense, I think we're going to be up there in the top 10 in the league. When you have a guy like Damon Harrison who is just so good at stopping the run, I expect him to be top half of the league for sure. So, we go to the cornerbacks now. Janoris Jenkins, for the most part, looked like his old self. Not really concerned there. Eli Apple, of course, just an inconsistent preseason. Some plays he looked great. Some plays he was getting balls caught on him and looked pretty clueless. So, you really just hope that he improves the consistency. It seems like he has his head on straight compared to last year, which is always good, but I just think Eli Apple right now is just a little too inconsistent for my liking and probably for the Giants' liking as well. So hopefully he can find some consistency in his game. Dante Dion, who had a really nice preseason game 4 against the Patriots, 2 interceptions. I've always liked Dante Dion's game. He was a undrafted free agent signing in like 2016, I believe. But he had the 2 interceptions last game, and the only problem with him is just staying healthy. I mean, the guy is like 160 pounds, I believe, so staying durable is going to be a really tough thing for Dion. But if he started the season as our slot corner, I would not be surprised, and I think he's a very talented player. He just needs to stay on the field more. So we have B.W. Webb, William Gay. I really don't have much to say about them. They're both veterans. They're probably not that good anymore. This is a position the Giants are just really thin at. Losing Sam Beal, who they got in the supplementary draft, was a huge loss. So it might come back to bite them later, but I wish they had more cornerback depth. Maybe if someone gets released, the Giants do have, I think $5 or $6 million in cap space after the Brett Jones trade and after the Odell contract. So if they do bring on another cornerback, I would not be surprised, and hopefully they do. So on to the safety position. Of course, we have Landon Collins, who has solidified his role. No surprise there. But whoever's going to play opposite of Landon Collins, that's what we don't know. Right now the options are Michael Thomas of the Dolphins, Curtis Riley, who came from the Titans, Andrew Adams, who we've had for the last few years, and then same with Darian Thompson. Thompson, I think, was a 4th-round pick a couple years ago. If I had to pick who gets this job, I would say it's Michael Thomas or Andrew Adams. Michael Thomas is 29 years old. He's had a really nice preseason, so I can't really go against him there. But I would like to see Andrew Adams get his opportunity. I don't know why the Giants have continued to go back to Darian Thompson. He does not impress me, honestly. I'm kind of over that at this point. I would like to see someone get an opportunity that's not named Darian Thompson. If they do pick Michael Thomas, then so be it. But I would like to see Andrew Adams, be a impact player on this team. I think he deserves that opportunity. He's played really well in the preseason, and so has Michael Thomas. So, I think one of those guys, based off what they've done in training camp and in the preseason, will get that opportunity. I don't know if they'll stay there the whole season, but it's just whoever gets it needs to play well and keep that spot. And playing alongside Landon Collins probably makes your job easier. So hopefully one of those guys can take that role and run with it. So in terms of, just like I did with the offense, in terms of their ceiling, how good can this Giants defense be? As I said, I think their front 7 can be as good as anybody's. They do have depth there. They do have really good players. I think their linebacking core is unbelievable. So I'm excited about that. But, I think with the cornerbacks they have and their safeties, other than Collins, I don't know if they can really be a top 5, top 10 defense. I think there's just too many holes there. Janoris Jenkins and Landon Collins would have to have, unbelievable first-team All-Pro years for the secondary to be really good. Eli Apple needs to step up. Dante Dion needs to stay healthy. And either Michael Thomas or Andrew Adams, whoever gets that other safety job, is going to have to be an impact player. So, right now, I would say the Giants' defense is going to finish between somewhere, 10 and 15 maybe in the league, which is totally fine. If everything went well for them and if their corners played well, I think maybe they can be a top 5 defense. They definitely have the talent to do it. As I said, I love James Bettcher and everything he does. He's a very aggressive defensive coordinator, which sometimes may hurt you, but I think for the most part, it makes an offense rattled, and I like everything he's done. So I think the Giants' ceiling right now is probably top 5, but I wouldn't count on it. I'm saying somewhere between 10 and 15 is probably where they'll finish this year. So, of course, we got to talk about this. Huge news for the Giants. They signed Odell Beckham to a 5-year, $95 million extension. I think it was a great move by the Giants. I mean, it's a little concerning coming off an injury. I think he had a broken ankle or something like that. I mean, it was pretty bad. So, based off what we've seen in the preseason, not the preseason, like practices and whatnot, he does look healthy. But, coming back from major injury is concerning. But you look at Odell and the things that he's done in his first 4 years in the league, really 3.5, I would say. He's done it better than anybody. I mean, he's broken so many records, and he's been such a huge impact player for this team. He's won games single-handedly for the Giants over the last 3 years. And, I think, it's hard to pay a receiver this much money, but when you're as good as Odell Beckham is, you can earn yourself a contract that's $65 million guaranteed. So, the Giants will end up paying him up until 2023 if everything goes well. And then be an unrestricted free agent in 2024. So, we're hoping he'll be a Giant for life, and I hope he bounces back. I mean, if I want anyone on this offense to have a nice year, it'd be Odell Beckham. I mean, he's been through a lot this year, so I hope he comes back and is his old self. And it was nice to see the Giants get this done. We didn't want this to be like a lingering issue heading into the season, and having the Giants talk about Odell's contract while actual games are going on. So to have this whole thing behind them is really nice, and I think he'll live up to it. If he's healthy, he's definitely going to live up to these numbers. And as I said, he's just such a huge impact player for this team. If you've watched the Giants with a healthy Odell, you would know how much of a difference he makes. He's making a receiver core with Ruben Randall and Preston Parker look impressive just based off his performance alone. So he's such a good player, and I hope he returns to form. So nice job by Dave Gettleman to get that done. So let's go back in the quarterbacks and look at that a little closer. I have their preseason stats written up. So Eli Manning, no touchdowns, which, you don't like to see. But, from an overall standpoint, really, really good. His completion percentage was really nice. Had a good rating of 90.1. Davis Webb, who looks like right now is definitely locked up as the quarterback behind Eli Manning. Based off the fact he did not even play in the 4th preseason game, you would assume that Webb is the guy if Eli Manning were to go down or get benched or something like that. So Davis Webb had a pretty nice preseason. His completion percentage wasn't great. Did have a touchdown and a 74.6 rating, which is average. So, he's still young, and he did have a really bad first game. So, if you take that game away, I'm sure his numbers look a lot better. And Kyle Lauletta, who had some impressive moments, did have 2 interceptions, a 51.4 rating, which is not good at all, and did have that one rushing touchdown, which was a very nice play. So, he's a guy who just has to mature and just continue to get reps, and he'll get better as time goes on. And, for Webb and Lauletta, it was a very, the spotlight was on them for most of the preseason, and, it's just a lot of pressure. So hopefully those guys just become more acclimated with the playbook and the team itself as the season goes on, and I think they'll get better as time goes on. So as I said before, we're going to touch on this later, the whole Jonathan Stewart situation. You look at that tweet on the top there. He's had 10 carries for -5 yards, which is hard to believe. He also had that fumble in the red zone. He's had about as bad of a preseason as you can ask of anybody. If you brought a random guy off the street and said, hey, you're going to play for the Giants tonight, you would expect him to have a similar performance to Jonathan Stewart. Just unbelievable how bad this guy was. I think he's 31 years old. The Giants are supposed to owe him a lot of money this year. Somewhere in the $3 million, and if they were to cut him, they would save $500,000, but they would have a dead cap hit of $3.3 million this year, I believe, and basically that would be like, you're not allowed to spend $3.3 million and have an empty roster spot. So cutting him kind of makes sense in a way, because it opens up room for guys that played behind him. There were some running backs that had some really nice preseasons, like Robert Martin, for example. There were guys who just really show that they have potential. I'd rather bring one of those young running backs rather than a guy who completely looks washed up at age 31. So, hopefully I get an alert later saying Jonathan Stewart was cut, but we'll see what happens. I mean, he's a really good guy, so I mean, it sucks to say all this about him, but at the end of the day, it's about winning football games, and Jonathan Stewart is not going to help his team win football games, and Wayne Gallman is so much better than Jonathan Stewart at this point, so, I don't think he'll make the team. If Dave Gettleman were to bring him on, because it seems like he loves him, that wouldn't shock me either. So it's really 50-50 right now, and I guess we'll see what happens later today. So I've picked a couple of sleeper picks for the Giants on both sides of the ball. So let's start with Cody Latimer. He'll be 25 years old this year. He was signed from the Broncos. He was a second-round pick, as I said before. Had over 2,000 receiving yards at Indiana in 3 seasons. I also said he's a big receiver. He's 6'3", 215 pounds. We saw Eli throw him a few jump balls in the red zone, so and we also saw him throw him that jump ball against the Jets on that big play they had. So Eli, trust him. Latimer, it's always been about staying healthy, and I think if he does that, he'll have a nice season for this team. I don't know if Shepard and Odell are healthy the whole year. I don't think his ceiling is that high, but as a third receiver, if Latimer puts up 40 catches for 500 yards and like 6 touchdowns, we'll be very happy with that. So I'm not expecting a huge year, but he's a guy that can be a really nice third receiver for a team. And then you go to B.J. Goodson, who I think has a higher ceiling. He's also 25 years old, was a 4th round of the Giants in 2016 out of Clemson. He was their leading tackler. I think that Clemson team went to like the national championship or something, so that was a good team. He had 14 solo tackles. I remember this game last year against the Cowboys. He was all over the place, and I think he got injured later in that game or maybe the week after, so we really never saw a healthy B.J. Goodson for most of the season. But when this guy's healthy, he's an amazing player. I think he's one of the most efficient tacklers in the league. As it says here, PFF had him ranked as third in combined tackle efficiency. So, he's a really good player, B.J. Goodson. Maybe the coverage skills aren't as good as his tackling abilities, but I think as an overall player, I think he's really good, and he needs to stay healthy once again, just like Latimer. These are both guys who have missed games in their careers, and I hope both of them have a healthy season. And if they do, then I think they could have really big impacts on this team. So the last part of this video is going to be our schedule, and I'm not one of those guys who picks wins and losses every week because you really can't predict that stuff. I mean, what if hypothetically Matt Ryan was out for the season in week 7? I mean, that changes the entire complexity of that game, so I won't be doing that. But if you look at their schedule overall, I mean, their first half of the year is just brutal. You open up with the Jaguars. I do think the Giants have a chance of winning that game. I mean, I think the Jaguars were a little, they got pretty lucky last year. I mean, I don't know if they can sustain that defense for a second straight year. They'll have a good defense overall, but I don't know if it'll be that good. The Cowboys, I think they're coming in overrated. I think we can handle them. The Texans, they get Deshaun Watson back, and then face Drew Brees and the Saints. It's nice that game's at home because anytime the Giants face Drew Brees, when he's home, it's been a rough showing. So, they play the Panthers, the Eagles, the Falcons, and then the Redskins. And then the second half of the year, the schedule lightens up a bit. I think the hardest team they play out of all these guys in the second half of the year, probably the Eagles, of course. I think the Bears and the Titans might be good this year, so we'll see. With the Giants, they might start off 500 this year for the first half of the year. Maybe they go 4-4 or something like that. But their second half of the year is where they really need to win some games, and it's good because it's a new coach, a new system, and as they get more comfortable with it, I think they have a nice chance at just coming out the second half of the year and being one of those surprise teams. And maybe they go undefeated the second half of the year. Who knows? But for a team that had the second worst record in the league last year, they do have the 8th toughest schedule based off opponents' records in 2017. As you see there, 133 and 123. So it's rough for the Giants, and they also have the toughest schedule out of NFC East teams. And I'm not really sure how it works like that because the Giants had such an awful year last year. But it is what it is, and you got to deal with what you've been given. So that's it for the Giants' schedule. It's tough to start out, but I think in the second half of the year they can win some games. So as we come up on 30 minutes now, I'm surprised how long this video went, but there's a lot of talk about entering the new season. If you made it this far, thank you very much, and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. If I had to guess what the Giants' record is this year, I mean, I hate to be that guy, but I think they're like an 8-8 team. Maybe they go 9-7. But the good news for us is, I think the NFC East is not going to be that good this year. You look at the Eagles. Their best quarterback's coming off an ACL injury, and he's not going to be ready for Week 1. Alshon Jeffrey's already injured. They lost some guys on defense, and they did get Michael Bennett from the Seahawks, but I really don't know how much he has left. So I guess we'll see. But I think the Eagles might struggle a bit this year. I don't think they'll be as dominant as last year. The Redskins they always seem to be an average team. They did get Alex Smith, who I do like him more than Kirk Cousins, but they do have questions on their defensive side of the ball. The Cowboys are just so overhyped this year. It's unbelievable. I mean, outside of Ezekiel Elliott, they really have no offensive weapons. I mean, Dak Prescott, definitely overrated in my opinion. And, I think this year we'll finally see who the real Dak Prescott is, and I can't wait till he's exposed. I think it'll be it might not be that good of a division, and the Giants could win it at 9-7. So I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs necessarily, but it'll be tough. I mean, as I said, the opening schedule, the first half of the season is just very hard, and we'll see what happens. But I'm so excited for this year. Happy there's a new regime. It's great having Ben McAdoo out the door and having new coordinators and new coach, and it seems like they actually know what they're doing, unlike the whole McAdoo system. So hopefully the Giants have a great year. I'm hoping for 16-0. I think there is a legitimate shot they win Week 1, and I'm really excited for it. So thanks for watching, guys.